Early this year, I started off with a bunch of goals that I set myself. But as the months rolled by, I noticed that I was pretty behind with some of these things. I've been working on a bunch of things this year, perhaps too many things. I've been spreading myself a bit too thin, and I've started going into autopilot, losing a bit of focus here and there, and I've been listening to more 3-hour podcasts than I probably should have. If this is something that you are experiencing too, then please let me know by smashing the like button. Today I want to let you in on my personal 3-step method that I use when I am behind on my goals. These are my personal notes that I use whenever I feel that I'm behind with my goals to get myself back on track so I can end this year on a high note. Here's a problem that many people have with goals. Many people set themselves a ton of great sounding goals at the beginning of the year, but then throughout the year they start getting exhausted and start losing steam, and by mid-year they already forgot about almost half of their goals. And the problem is that next year it's the same thing all over again. You set yourself new goals, but you haven't even achieved your old goals, and because of that you kind of start losing trust in yourself. As in, it didn't work last year, why should it work this year? I'm setting all of these cool goals, but there are at least 3 goals from last year that I didn't achieve and that I didn't even make any progress with. And that way you start every new year on a low note, tired and not confident. And in order to avoid this kind of really demotivating situation, you need to end this year on a high note. But isn't it a bit too early to be doing this now? The answer is no, because if you want to be ending this year on a high note, then you will need to be doing most of the hard work right now. So today I want to share with you the 3 steps that I use to get back on track with my goals. And if you apply this, you will be running the final laps toward the end of the year strong instead of feeling down and running out of steam. Anyways, there's some personal stuff here, but I will try to censor as little as possible. So let's start. Here's a short summary. The first one is that you need to look at your existing goals, the goals that you already had, that already exist. The second thing is that you need to tweak these goals, and there are different ways that you can do this. I will go into more detail after this. And the third thing is that you need to identify and add small, tiny goals that you can add on top of your existing goals that will help you make the whole process much easier. And I know this might sound a bit counterintuitive. Why add goals when I cannot even achieve the ones that I have? But don't worry, I will break this down for you. So let's start with the first step. The first step is that you need to look at your existing goals. And these are the big major goals that you set yourself at the beginning of the year. You might have 3 goals, 1 goal, you might even have 10 goals. But the point is that you need to look at these and identify which are actually the important goals that really matter. You need to remind yourself of the importance of these goals. You need to remind yourself, bring back into your memory what the reason was that you decided to set this goal in the first place. For example, your goal might have been to run 30 minutes 3 times a week, but now you realize, I haven't really been doing this. I forgot all about it. I was so tired. I didn't have any time. I didn't have energy. So I kind of forgot that I had this goal to begin with. So this is the point where you have to kind of refresh this goal. You have to remind yourself, why was it that you decided to set this goal of running 30 minutes 3 times per week? It could purely be a health or fitness reason, or the reason could be that you just want to look better in certain clothing. It could be whatever, but the important thing is that you need to remind yourself the reason behind why you set that goal in the first place. You need to connect each of these goals that you have to a larger vision. You need to ask yourself, what was the purpose behind setting this goal? And also, very importantly, you need to prevent yourself from making the same mistake again, which was forgetting all about the goal. And how do you do that? You do that by bringing all these goals to the very forefront of your mind. For example, the easiest way that you can do this is simply write it on a post-it and then stick it somewhere where you can easily see it and not miss it. For example, you can stick it on the bathroom door or on the fridge or wherever. The point is that you make it visual. You put it somewhere where you simply cannot avoid it. If you use a notebook, a physical notebook like I have, or a scheduler, or even if you use Google Calendar, you can simply schedule in those goals so that you will be constantly reminded that this is something important to you that you want to achieve this year. So in summary, for your existing goals, remind yourself of the goals that you had early this year. Secondly, remind yourself what the purpose was. Connect your goal to the vision. Why was it that in the first place you set yourself this goal? And the third important thing is to remind yourself of these goals constantly by writing those goals down in a place that you can easily see and that you will not miss. Now let's go on to step number 2. The second step that you need to do, according to my notes, is tweaking your goals. And tweaking your goals, simply as the word implies, means changing your goals. And there are different ways to go about it. You can drop your goal, so decide to eliminate it. You can decide to postpone your goal, meaning that you say, okay, this year I just have too much on my plate. It's simply not possible. I'm spreading myself too thin. In that case, I'm deciding proactively to postpone this goal to next year. I will not do it this year. I will do it next year instead. But there are other ways that you can tweak your goal without fully eliminating your goal. You can stretch your goal. Stretching your goal would mean that you make your goal bigger than it currently is. And that might not be something that you would want to do mid-year. And the other option is that you simply shrink the goal. Shrinking your goal simply means to make the scope smaller. It's just about honestly admitting to yourself, okay, I really want to do this. I still want to run 30 minutes every week, but I just can't do it 3 times because of my schedule, because of my other priorities. It's simply not possible. But at the same time, I also don't want to completely scrap this goal either and achieve nothing. So instead of keeping your goal the way it is, running 30 minutes 3 times a week, and at the end of the year feel that you are a failure, a loser, that you didn't achieve what you set out to do, instead of doing that, shrink your goal. Just admit to yourself that, okay, I just have to tone it down a bit, but it doesn't mean that I won't be making any progress. So instead of running 30 minutes 3 times a week, you can tell yourself, okay, I'll run 15 minutes 2 times a week. I mean, if you look at it from a bird's eye view perspective, running 2 times 15 minutes a week is still better than nothing. So here's the time where I share with you a concrete example from my own personal life and my own experience with being behind with goals. So at the beginning of this year, I set myself the goal of starting to write a script for a web series. And yes, you guessed right, I decided to drop this. No, correction, I didn't drop this goal, but I decided to postpone it. I decided to do it next year instead of this year, because I realized that in light of all the things that I need to get done this year with my 2 YouTube channels and also things going on in my personal life, I knew that I didn't even want to work just 2 hours per week on this web series script, because I knew that I would be stretching myself way too thin, and at the end of the year I would not be making much progress with anything else. So instead of working on too many things, I decided to just postpone writing that script to next year, and this year fully focusing on my 2 YouTube channels. Another personal goal that I also had for this year is that I wanted to meet up with my brother who is living in Seattle, but I know that this year, because of the current situation, it will be very difficult for us to do international travel. By the way, if you don't know yet, I and my husband live in Toronto in Canada, so we postponed it and we decided let's just do it next year when things have toned down a little bit, instead of trying to force it and squeeze it in this year. So these are all very personal decisions, and no one can tell you what you should do or what you should not do, because only you yourself really know about your capacity, how much energy you have, and how many things you have on your plate, and what your priorities are. So now around mid-year is a really good time to just take stock of all of your goals again and put everything in its right place. So if at the beginning of the year, let's say you had 8 goals, instead of making yourself work on all of the 8 goals and then end this year feeling like you've not accomplished much, that you didn't make any significant progress with any of these goals, rather than doing that, just tweak your goals. Decide to either drop your goal, postpone your goal, shrink your goal, or only if you really want to mix things around, then you might even decide to stretch your goals. For example, if you had 8 goals, You might decide to scrap all 6 goals and instead just focus on 2 goals but stretch them. Because that way, by just focusing on these 2, you might achieve some sort of economies of scales and make really big groundbreaking progress with that. Now let's go on to step number 3 if you want to get back on track with your goals. Step number 3 is to add small goals or implement small habits that would make a significant difference this year. And why small here? At this point in the year, you don't want to be adding any new big goals to your plate. What you can do though is start and implement small habits that won't take up any extra time, but change the way that you do things, change the way that you operate so that you can become more effective. It's not adding on a new goal, for example, like learning a new language, but rather it's a small habit that you start doing that you can integrate into your daily life that won't take up any additional time. On the contrary, it might save you some time. And here I want to share with you 3 habits that I personally started applying recently that made me feel like I was more efficient in my work and I was also more calm and also being more productive. The first one is reducing task switching. I'm sure that you know what I mean, right? You're working on your computer and then your phone rings, you get a notification, you check your social media, and then suddenly you remember that you need to pay a bill, and then you log into your online banking account and then you pay your bill. But then within the same minute, you go back to your laptop and you work on a project that is due 2 weeks from now. And then you get a message from a friend who notifies you that something is going on in the news, and then you check out the news and then you watch a YouTube video and so on, and you do this repeatedly in quick succession. That is what is called task switching. And while we may feel that we are more productive that way because we're working on many things simultaneously, in reality that's not the case. It's been proven that people are not really able to multitask. We think that we are multitasking, but at any point in time we are actually only focusing on one thing. This is one habit that I've started to implement, which is significantly reduce task switching and focus on one thing at a time. The next thing is doom scrolling. Yes, I do it on YouTube. I don't use a lot of social media, but I do spend a lot of time on YouTube. And in the evening when I finish my work, I like to go on YouTube. I watch some videos, but I also love to doom scroll. I keep on scrolling and scrolling, and it feels very disruptive and a bit stress inducing. So that is something that I don't want to do, especially before I go to bed. The third habit that I've applied recently is to apply scoping before working. So one of the things that has happened to me is that I started working on something. For example, I start outlining a YouTube video and then I get carried away and I spend so much time on it, which is a good thing. But sometimes I spend a little bit too much time on it and then I don't get the other things done. So now I really make it a point before I start doing something, I set myself the maximum time limit. For example, okay, to research and outline this video, I will spend 2.5 hours. To be honest, it's never exactly 2.5 hours, but mostly I've been able to keep that within a range of plus minus 10 to 20%. So the good thing about that is that at the end of the day, I mostly achieve what I set out to do and I feel good about myself. So I think that adding small goals, adding small habits to your daily routine can really be a game changer because it can help you to become more productive and ultimately help you in achieving all those goals that are so important to you. So what will this 3-step process do for you? If you apply this 3-step process, which is number 1, remind yourself of the existing goals that you already have. Remind yourself of why it was in the first place that you set yourself this goal, to give yourself the energy and the enthusiasm for the rest of the year. And number 2, tweak your goals, which is either decide to drop your goal or postpone your goal, shrink your goal or stretch your goal. And number 3, add a small goal or habit to make your processes more efficient and less anxiety inducing. By doing this, you will have a kind of a game plan. You will have a game plan according to which you can operate until the end of the year. By having reviewed all your goals and having put each of these goals in its proper place, it is much more likely that you will achieve them by the end of the year. So that way you can end this year on a high note. You can tell yourself, wow, there are so many significant things that I've achieved this year. And granted, I didn't achieve all the goals that I set out at the beginning of this year, but I've made peace with it. I've looked at the resources, the time, the energy that I have left this year against all the goals that I have, and I've made a decision for each of these goals. So there's nothing kind of lingering in the back of your mind thinking, what about this? I actually wanted to do this, but I kind of failed. I completely forgot about this. Like, that is a completely crappy feeling. So by ending this year on a high note, you will definitely be starting the next year full of energy and enthusiasm. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video was useful to you. If you found value in my videos, then the best thing that you can do is help me to share this video to your family members, to friends on social media. That would really mean a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week.